All right, I want you to picture a scene with me. It's October 14th, 1806.
Okay.
We're in the German city of Jena. The air is, well, it's thick with smoke. The ground is shaking from cannon fire.
In the Prussian army, which everyone thought was invincible,
is literally collapsing in real time. It's just chaos. And in the middle of all this, the philosopher G.W.F. Hegel is sitting there basically watching his own nation get torn apart.
I mean, for him, it's a moment of total geopolitical catastrophe.
Exactly. But then he looks out his window and he sees the man responsible for it all. Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor, riding through the streets.
Right.
Now, most people would see a tyrant, an invader, maybe just a terrifyingly good general. But Hegel, he writes this letter to a friend and he says he has just seen the world's soul on horseback.
Weltseelig. It's one of those famous and frankly most dramatic phrases in all of philosophy.
It's a massive title to give a guy on a horse, but it really sets the hook for everything we're diving into today, because Hegel wasn't just, a fanboy. He wasn't talking about Napoleon the man.
No, he was talking about Napoleon the Force.
The Force.
Precisely. He didn't see some random conqueror. He saw a tool and an inevitable instrument of history.
A vessel.
A vessel, exactly.
Yeah.
He believed that through Napoleon, the abstract idea of spirit was touching the ground. It was dismantling the old feudal world to build a new, more rational one. Napoleon didn't really have a choice in the matter.
And that brings us right to the mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking this tension that I think every single person listening feels, even if they don't have the academic terms for it. It's this battle between the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age, and our own free will.
This is the ultimate question of agency, really. Are you the author of your own life? Or are you just a character in a script that's been written by these vast invisible forces?
Whether that's economics or culture, or in 2026, the algorithms curating your reality.
Exactly.
We've got a huge stack of sources today. We're going to trace this idea from its birth in German idealism, flip it on its head with Karl Marx, and then get into this huge fight about the great man theory.
And finally, we'll land on whether our social media feeds are the new destiny. It's a journey from the metaphysical to the digital.
But we have to start with that word, zeitgeist.
Right.
We throw it around all the time. Oh, that movie really captures the zeitgeist, or that meme is the zeitgeist. We usually just mean it's a vibe or a trend.
Sure, but in the deep philosophy of the 18th and 19th centuries, it meant something so much heavier. Literally, it translates from German as time spirit.
Time spirit.
Yeah, and thinkers like Herder and Goethe, they weren't talking about pop culture.
Yeah.
They were describing an immanent force.
Immanent, meaning it's sort of inherent within the world, pushing things forward, like a current in a river.
That's a perfect analogy. You can't see the current, but it's moving everything in a very specific direction.
Yeah.
See, Hegel believed history wasn't just one damn thing after another.
Right, it had a purpose. A telos was the word.
A telos, exactly. It was the unfolding of spirit or Geist, and it was moving humanity toward more rationality and more freedom.
And the engine driving this whole thing is what he called the dialectic. Now, I've always loved this concept because it actually makes sense of why progress is so messy.
It really does. How would you break it down?
Well, the way I'm reading it in the sources is that history moves through contradiction. You have a thesis, let's say, the rigid old order of European feudalism.
Okay.
That system then creates its own opposite, the antithesis, which would be the chaotic, bloody liberty of the French Revolution. And these two things, they just crash into each other.
And that crash is incredibly violent.
Right. But out of that wreckage, you don't just get a winner, you get a synthesis, a new level of reality that kind of combines the two, like a state that has laws but also protects individual rights.
That is a perfect summary, but we have to be honest about the cost here.
Yeah.
Hegel was a realist. He used a phrase that really stood out to me in the reading, the slaughter bench of history.
That is a grim image. Sounds like a horror movie.
It's Hegel basically admitting that the zeitgeist does not care about your personal happiness. Entire nations can be ruined, individuals can be crushed, wars are fought.
But if it moves the spirit forward,
then Hegel considers it rational. It's all part of the plan.
Which brings us right back to Napoleon. If history is a slaughter bench, Napoleon is the butcher.
But Hegel would argue he isn't holding the knife by choice. He's a historical necessity. The spirit needed to dismantle feudalism right then. The pressure was building. Napoleon was just the guy who happened to be there to do it.
So if it wasn't him, it would have been somebody else.
The spirit would have found another vessel. The role was already written. He just got the part.
See, that's the part that makes me uncomfortable. It implies that even the people we see as movers and shakers, the Caesars, the Napoleons, they're just puppets. They think they're driving, but the car is on autopilot.
It's a humbling thought. But then, as the 19th century rolls on, the Industrial Revolution hits hard. And people kind of stop looking up at spirit and ideas.
And start looking at smokestacks and paychecks.
Which is where Karl Marx comes in.
Right. The sources call this the materialist inversion.
Because Marx looks at Hegel and essentially says, you've got it completely backward. History isn't driven by these lofty ideas or world souls. It's driven by stuff. Yeah. By material conditions.
So instead of ideas trickling down to change the world,
the material world changes our ideas. Marx argued that the economic base, who owns the factories, who owns the land, how we make things, that dictates the superstructure.
And the superstructure is everything else.
Everything we think makes us who we are. Our laws, our religion, our culture, even our morality.
Okay, so let's apply that. If I'm a factory owner in the 1850s, I probably think I'm a good person because I value hard work and punctuality.
All those virtues, yeah.
But Marx would look at me and say, what?
He'd say, no, you value hard work and punctuality because those are the traits that make your factory profitable. You're just acting out a script written by capital. You aren't free. You're a product of your class.
So my moral compass is just a magnetic needle pointing towards my own economic interests.
That's the argument. And once you put on these, let's call them determinism glasses, you start seeing these scripts everywhere.
It's not just about money. The sources pointed out a few other kinds of determinism.
Oh, it fractures into all sorts. Take technological determinism, Marshall McLuhan's famous line.
We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us.
Exactly. Think about the smartphone. We think it's just a tool we use, but it has completely rewired how we date, how we focus, how we get angry,
how we sleep. It didn't just help us do things, it changed who we are.
That's the essence of it. Or you've got geographical determinism. Jared Diamond's Guns, Germs, and Steel is the classic example.
Right, the idea that Europe conquered the Americas not because of some inherent genius,
but because Eurasia just happened to have better domesticable animals, cows, pigs, horses, and an east-west axis that made it easier to spread crops. It was a geographic lottery.
It's humbling. You didn't choose to be born in a wheat farming latitude any more than you chose to be born in the age of the internet.
And then there's even linguistic determinism, the idea from Wittgenstein and others that the limits of your language are the limits of your world.
That one always trips me up. If I don't have a word for blue, do I even see the sky the same way?
Or, more subtly, if your language frames time as a resource you spend or waste, you'll probably feel anxious about it. If another language frames it as a cycle, you might feel totally different.
So here's the so what for everyone listening. If my bank account predicts my politics, my geography predicts my success, and my language limits my thoughts, does choice actually exist?
Or is it just a comforting illusion? That's the central anxiety of modern life, and it sets up the fiercest debate in this stack of notes, the great man versus the tide of history.
Okay, let's take the great man side first. I think this is sort of our default setting. We love a biopic, we love the story of the lone genius, the architect of reality.
Thomas Carlyle was the champion of this view. He wrote on heroes, hero worship, and the heroic in history. For him, history is basically the biography of great men.
It's the Steve Jobs theory. One guy has a vision in a garage and boom, the whole world is swiping on glass screens.
Precisely. Carlyle would say Jobs was the architect. But then you get the counterpunch, and it comes from a real heavyweight. Leo Tolstoy?
Oh, Tolstoy hated the great man theory. Despised it.
He despised it. I mean, War and Peace is basically a 1,000-page essay designed to dismantle the Napoleon myth. He argued that the great man is actually the least free person in the world.
Wait, hold on. The emperor is the least free. That feels counterintuitive. How does that work?
Well, think about it. He's tethered to everything. Napoleon thinks he's commanding the army.
But he's not.
Not really. He's dependent on logistics, on the mud on the roads, the morale of 1 million individual soldiers, the supply lines. Tolstoy called the hero a retrospective illusion. We just look back and say he did it because it's too hard to track the chaotic movements of millions.
So the leader is just the label we slap on the wave after it's already crashed.
A wave that was going to crash anyway. He says a king is history's slave.
But is there a middle ground? It feels wrong to say individuals don't matter at all. I mean, if you take Martin Luther King Jr. out of the 1960s, does the civil rights movement happen in the exact same way?
And Hegel, always the synthesizer, offers a bridge here. He didn't deny that great men exist, but he called them midwives to the Zeitgeist.
Midwives. That's a very different image than a general or an architect.
It is. It implies that the great person is someone who intuits what is already ready to be born. They sense the tension in the air, the unexpressed will of the time, and they just act to bring it into reality.
So they're crucial.
But only because the baby was ready to come out anyway.
So MLK didn't invent the desire for justice out of thin air. He channeled a moral force that was already building enormous pressure in the zeitgeist. He gave it a voice.
Correct. He articulated the spirit. He read the room of history better than anyone else.
Now, this all sounds very poetic: spirits, midwives, unfolding reason. But the sources take a darker turn here. There is a real danger in believing in destiny, isn't there?
A massive danger. This is where the 20th century really had to push back against Hegel and Marx. We have to talk about Karl Popper in his book, The Poverty of Historicism.
Right. Popper argued that historicism, this belief that history follows inevitable laws, is basically the root of totalitarianism.
Think about it. If you believe the future is fixed, if you believe the spirit is inevitably moving toward, say, a communist utopia or a 1,000-year Reich,
then anyone who stands in your way isn't just a political opponent.
they're an obstacle to progress. They are an enemy of destiny itself.
Which makes it incredibly easy to justify atrocities.
It does. You can just say, hey, I'm not doing this. History's doing this. I'm just clearing the path for what's supposed to happen anyway. It removes all moral responsibility.
That is genuinely terrifying. It's like saying, the car's driving itself, so it's not my fault if it runs you over.
Exactly. And Isaiah Berlin hit on this too. He asked, if history determined by these vast forces, can we actually blame tyrants? Can we blame Stalin? If he was just a puppet of economic forces, then he's not evil, he's just a mechanism.
So to preserve any kind of morality, we have to preserve the idea that we can choose.
Berlin argued, we have to prioritize negative liberty. The ability to say no, to make choices that can trump necessity. We have to believe things could have been different.
Which brings us to right now, to 2026. We're not riding horses through Jana, we're scrolling through feeds. But the question is still the same. What is the spirit of the age today?
You know, if Marx said the hidden force was economics, I think today we have to talk about algorithmic determinism.
The algorithm as the new zeitgeist. That is unsettling. Because we carry it around in our pockets.
And think about Cass Sunstein's work on echo chambers. In Hegel's time, you could argue there was maybe one broad spirit of the age. The Enlightenment, say.
But today?
Today, algorithms curate our reality so intensely that we have fragmented zeitgeists.
Right. You and I could be living in the same year, in the same city, spiritually. We're in completely different worlds because our feeds are feeding us different facts, different outrages, different realities.
And it's not passive. It's subtly coercive. The sources mention the Overton window. That range of ideas considered acceptable in public discourse.
And algorithms are constantly shifting that window. They promote what gets engagement, which is usually anger or extreme conformity, and they just bury nuance.
It's a form of soft determinism. You feel like you're expressing your own opinion, but you're often just signaling within the safe boundaries that the code has reinforced for you. You're performing for the spirit of the algorithm.
And we have to mention the postmodern critique here from someone like Michel Foucault.
Foucault would say that whenever someone starts talking about the spirit of the age, we should probably check for a wallet or a weapon.
He'd basically say the zeitgeist is just a mask for power structures.
Exactly. The Enlightenment spirit talked a lot about freedom, but it conveniently ignored slavery and colonialism. So Foucault would ask, who is being silenced by this so-called spirit? And today we have to ask, who is coding the zeitgeist?
So let's try to synthesize all this for the listener. We've gone from Napoleon to TikTok, from the world soul to the code. We feel like we make choices. I chose what to have for breakfast. But we're also, as the philosopher Heidegger said, thrown.
Thrown is the perfect word. Geworfenheit. We are thrown into a world we didn't make. You didn't choose your language, your culture, your economic system, or the century you were born in. You just land in the middle of the movie.
So where does that leave us? Are we just trapped in the script? Is resistance futile?
Well, the sources offer this beautiful alternative from the Russian philosopher Mikhail Bakhtin. He viewed history not as a monologue, but as a polyphonic conversation.
Polyphonic, meaning many voices.
Yes. It's not a single script that we're all just reading from. It's a dialogue.
Yep.
Structure and agency are in a constant negotiation. The zeitgeist pushes us. It gives us the vocabulary, the setting, the problems.
But we push back. We reinterpret, we invent. I love that. It means that you, the listener, you're not just an actor reading lines, you're more like an improv artist. The stage is set, the props are glued down, but what you say, that part's still up to you.
Precisely. Acknowledging the zeitgeist doesn't mean you surrender to it. It means you understand the currents so you know how to swim. And sometimes that means riding the wave like a Hegelian hero. But sometimes
it means recognizing that the current is heading toward a waterfall and choosing to swim upstream.
And that's where real freedom is. Knowing the difference. If you ignore the zeitgeist, you're naive. If you surrender to it, you're a puppet.
I think there's one final provocative thought we need to leave everyone with. It comes from these modern reinterpretations.
If the zeitgeist of our current era is defined by this digital fragmentation we talked about and by the looming ecological crisis, we have to ask ourselves a hard question.
Are we accepting the spirit as inevitable?
Right. The danger of any zeitgeist is that it convinces us that this is just how things are. Politics is just polarized. The climate is just doomed.
But if we've learned anything from this deep dive, it's that the spirit changes. It changes because people choose to change it. The question is, are we blinding ourselves to other possibilities, to other ways of living, because we're too busy scrolling through the script of the current age?
That is the big question. Are you writing the history of tomorrow or just hitting retweet on the history of today?
Thanks for diving deep with us.
Hey, pleasure as always.
See you next time.